Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
All right, hello, welcome to the GSMC Football Podcast on the GSMC Podcast Network. It's the dynamic duo of the podcast world, universe, zeitgeist. It's me and Bryce. Oh, that rhymed right there. I didn't mean to do that one. Bryce, how are you doing, man? How was your weekend? Falcons, they lose, they let go of, what's his name, right? Of Tack McKinley, and then they went and got a dub?
I mean, we were on bye week this week, so.
Oh yeah, that's right. I remember.
Yeah,
now.
so we were just resting up at home, man, getting our bodies ready, getting ready for the grind, trying to pull off one of the greatest comebacks in the season in NFL history. And starts this week with rivalry week, so looking forward to that. And but outside of that, man, I had a good weekend. Pretty smooth, but can't complain. You know, watch sports primarily most of the weekend, relaxed, ate some good food, you know, the usual, you know, always trying to live a very simple but relaxing life. How about you? How was your weekend? How are you been?
My weekend was pretty solid, man, you know. Can't lie. It's been one of the better weekends I've ever had, just personally and sports wise. So that was until, of course, you know, my man's went down bad, bro. Can't lie. Saints, I don't know. Saints are a question mark for now on, man. I was all high. I was on a lifelong high after beating the Buccaneers to their knees. And now we are at ends meet. We have to depend on Jameis Winston to carry us for the remainder of the regular season, I think, because honestly, I have no idea how long this injury is going to hold Drew back. But at least it has nothing to do with his throwing motion. But then again, I feel like your torso and your body has a lot to do with throwing the football. So
yeah, I think Drew loses a lot of his midsection when he throws.
Yeah, so that's not. Yeah, he has no arm strength. This is the worst. His arm is not there anymore, man. So he was using all torso to throw them balls. That's not good. That is not good. And I'm afraid, bro, if he gets hit again, bro, it might be wraps. So luckily he didn't take a sack or else on those last two drives. But I guess we're just going to go ahead and get into it. We're going to start with our usual NFC, then we'll get to AFC, and then we'll do what we do later on in the podcast, of course, and bounce off of that. But we got to talk about the biggest news coming out the NFL. You know, the Saints are going to catch some fines at some point because of their no masks during their celebration in the locker room versus Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I just have to speak on this real quick. This is foolishness because, sure, if you want to fine us, that's fine, for lack of a better term, right? But fine everybody else, too, because there's videos of teams celebrating in the locker rooms with no mask on just as much. Like, this is foolishness. It's only because we beat Tampa Bay, and that's it. I don't want to talk. I don't want to argue about it. It's only because we beat Tampa Bay. They didn't do this when we beat Chicago. Same thing happened. It's only because we embarrassed Tom on national TV. And really, Tom embarrassed himself. It's his fault, not ours. Point at somebody else.
Now, do you actually think they might actually go ahead and take a draft pick away too, or you just think if they do that, that is obscene, and you're just going to be extremely upset with the league?
There's no. Is that on the table?
I know I remember reading something. They said it's under consideration that they might take a draft pick away.
That's foolishness, bro. So if they took a draft pick away, I honestly would say the Saints have to take this up to court or however they need to do. They have to appeal this. It's nonsense.
It says y'all could, see a significant discipline for post-game celebration that violated COVID-19 protocols, which includes losing a draft pick.
That is nonsense. Everybody else has done it. And let's keep in mind, right? Let's keep this in mind. This is not like every other player that played on that day did not test, like they tested negative in order to play. They have to take tests in order to get on the field and play the game. So anybody who is in the vicinity of the team, are you trying to tell me that a team that realistically just played an hour long or over more game of football with other dudes around them, no mask, and now because they're celebrating in the locker room with the same players, all of a sudden it's an issue? It's nonsense. The league is coming after us because we beat Brady twice. That's all it is. It always has been. Keep your eyes open. Open your third eyes. This is what's happening here. This is a disgrace, and I have no wants to it. And yes, this is me on 10 right now because I'm extremely saddened by the fact that I have no idea where the team is going to be. I would love to just brush this off and say it is what it is, Super Bowl bound, because I don't know anymore. I don't know what we are.
I mean, hey, listen, with everything that's happening around the Saints right now, man, I'm saying this now. You have to believe in Sean Payton because he is this offensive guru who is able to create these creative offenses, creative plays. You've seen what he's done with Taysom Hill, which I do expect to see a lot of Taysom Hill over the next few weeks. But obviously he will not be the starter. It will be Jameis. And listen, we have to remember something here about Winston. His biggest issue is turnovers, right? So what if he cuts down with turnovers? He's productive. All you need him to do is be productive with no turnovers, and you guys should be absolutely fine. And so if he can do – and then remember, the offense will now open up. Because remember, what is something you just said earlier in the podcast? Drew Brees has no arm strength. Winston can go down the field. Big plays are going to come to the offense now because now he can say, I can call a go route, and I know my quarterback can actually throw it down the field and make a big play. So some of the speedier guys you have may have more opportunities because of that. So this isn't all bad. It's just all depending on what does Jameis learn from Drew? What does he learn from Sean? What type of games do they call for Jameis going into it? That's going to be the bigger thing. Then also, even though Brees can move, Jameis is a little bit more mobile. So, again, it's not the worst. This is his audition. He realizes, listen, if I play well, I'm going to be a starting quarterback somewhere next year, just like Teddy. If I suck, I may not be in the league. So with all that being known, Ethan, you don't think he knows all that and says, all right, I have a good team around me. I have a number one receiver, a top running back, good tight end, a good supporting cast, and I know this is it. I got to play well. Now, listen, we can sit here and talk about the fact that the next 3 weeks are going to be very crucial. Y'all are going to beat Denver. Nobody's doubting you're going to beat Denver. You're playing the Falcons twice, my team twice. That's what's going to get Winston his money. If he balls out against the Falcons and the Saints win, then I'm sure your confidence will go up again. If he struggles and y'all lose, then I'll understand if your confidence comes down. But I think with everything on the line here for Jameis, I think he might be able to rise to the occasion and give y'all the performances y'all need to hold up while Drew Brees is out.
I have to see it, man. I know, you can live off of past experiences, right? If anybody can do it, it's Sean Payton because he did it last year. And I guess that's the biggest takeaway right there. Sean Payton was in a similar position last year. And I think that, I honestly don't know what the timetable is on this, but last year it was 6 games. And Drew Brees basically was playing on semi-fractured ribs for a solid 2 weeks straight. And now that they're fractured on both sides and he has a collapsed lung, he had to hang it up because he couldn't do it anymore. The look on his face, people are reporting that out of 15 years of watching Drew Brees, they've never seen him look like this. He looks done. And I don't know. I don't even know what to say about that personally, because I was not mentally prepared. Like, if that's the way Drew Brees is done for the remainder of his career, that's tough, for real. But either way, Sean Payton wants to go out there and win. And this isn't going to be some, oh man, Drew's done, so that team is done. That team has nothing but weapons, and all you need to do is get them the ball. This isn't a barren wasteland of talent here, right? This team is extremely talented. The offensive line is still one of the better offensive lines in the league, even though they can have they've been having to move some pieces around and start a lot of young guys out of their position, and that's coming with some growing pains. But I think, like, no disrespect, young man, but if we can beat the 49ers, I'm pretty sure we can beat the Falcons. And if not, I think our defense can at least stop you 3 times before your offense, or before your defense can stop us. How about that? I don't think your defense is an answer for Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas and Jared Cook and Callaway and Taysom Hill when he gets the ball every third play. There's just a lot of talent on the Saints, is what I'm trying to say. And I know Denver can't do anything, for sure. So, as you can see, all you need to do against Denver is just run the football. So, yeah. So Denver, I'm not afraid of. It's these NFC teams that we're going to be eventually running up against coming out of the NFC West that I don't know. Jameis can be in a shootout, man. If Jameis wants to revert back and just start slanging it, bro, you know, that's just what it is. You just got to live and die. You just got to live or die with the Jameis. But I hope Jameis feels more confident. Like, he looked pretty confident when he first came in and when he gave those back-to-back throws that we were seeing, and he just couldn't get the ball to Michael Thomas, though. That was tough in the end zone. I need that for fantasy purposes too. But regardless, right, the Saints are in a curious predicament, right? They need to beat Atlanta twice, I feel like, and they need to basically run the table in the NFC South, because not New England, I almost said that, but Tampa Bay looks like they are back on track, and we may have their number as far as the season stuff goes, but in order to keep them down so that way we can at least try to get the top spot in the conference, we have to win out. Like, there's no choice. We have to win out, and the Kansas City game is going to matter so much, right? So that's why we have to win out the rest of the division, because you couldn't pay me to tell you who's winning the Kansas City game against New Orleans, and that with no Drew Brees. Like, I just don't know who's going to be. What I do know is this: all my faith lies in Sean Payton. And we've seen time and time again, this defense is playing much better now, mind you. They got Quan Alexander, who made a big difference. And I know it was against Nick Mullins and whatever the case may be. But we literally shut out Brady last week, and people have already seemed to forget about it. And they come back, Tom Brady beats up on the Panthers, and now it's just like, oh, they're back. And it's like, oh, so was it just rust, or they weren't together? Or was it that the Saints defense is actually really good and they've only given up, like, I think a combined 15 points in 8 quarters of football? Let me find out. I don't know.
It could be both. I mean, I'm sure what we've learned from Tampa is also they're extremely inconsistent team. And so, you know, with that, you never know what Tampa team you're going to get week by week. But it's going to be very interesting, I think. You know, the NFC is so wide open right now. I mean, not only winning out the winning division, but you still could get the number 1 spot in the NFC. And so, with that being known, there's a lot on the line in these games. Your schedule isn't getting any easier, even though you don't play Tampa Bay for the rest of the season. And it's just going to be big, you know? Like I said, money will be made these next few weeks. Either somebody's losing money, making money, or losing a job. And that's what really it comes down to in the next few weeks. I do believe Drew will be back before the end of the year, going into the playoffs, which actually might be good because Drew is a little older. Yeah, he's recovering, but at least he's not, he can get himself back going, healthy 100%. And then we'll have to see what happens when it gets to the playoffs. And then the run is expected to be had between you and other guys, whatever seed you guys end up at, who you play, and see how far the Saints can actually end up making it. And then you never know, man. You already know. If COVID hits a team and a game gets postponed, you already know the NFL's emergency plan to add an eighth playoff team. So then you may be playing the eighth seed in the NFC. And then you assume that team's not that good. And boom, now the Saints are in the divisional. And now look at you. After all this doubt, you're a game away from the NFC Championship game and 2 games away from the Super Bowl.
You just like to paint good pictures, Bryce. I understand. You're a painter of good pictures. Let's take our first break, and then we'll come back and talk about the NFC.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
All right, GSMC Football Podcast. We're moving on towards the west side of the NFC. West side? We got had a big-time NFC West matchup. It was the Seattle Seahawks versus the Rams. I think the Rams were at home, right? I think so.
Yeah, I believe so.
All right. Either way, the Rams dominated defensively, and is it time to hit panic mode on the Seahawks? They've lost 3 out of their last 4 games, and really they could have lost that Minnesota game. They could have lost 4 straight.
Yeah, that's extremely true. And the thing that I think is going on right now is Russell is having to do too much because he has to do too much. Because you have to score 30-plus points weekly, it seems like, for you to win if you're Seattle. And so now he knows I have to take more chances. I have to be more forceful. Because if I'm conservative, I can't be conservative knowing my defense may not be able to stop the other team in the other opposing offense. And I think that's what's happening. Because, it's interesting with Seattle because they said there is kind of a formula to this team. Now, we always have to keep in mind, too, that Seattle is not healthy on the offensive end. They're still about their top 2-3 running backs. They're usually a better team when they're able to run the ball and they have their top running backs. And then Jamal Adams has been dealing with injuries all year. But you saw with the Rams, they have Jalen Ramsey. They put him on DK. DK was non-existent. They only had 1 catch, I believe, the whole game. Outside of that, they seemed like they were able to keep Tyler Lockett under control as well. And then the offense didn't have a running game, and the offense was just, yeah. And remember, the Seattle offensive line isn't the greatest either. Now put on top of that, the defense isn't good. So think about Russell knowing, man, I got to score 30 a game. I got to throw into the tight windows. I got to take chances because if I don't, we might get blown out. And I think it's just catching up. Remember, you even said, Ethan, at the beginning of this year, you don't think this is continuous. You don't think this is something that can be kept up because of this reasoning. Because you knew, like, hey, yeah, he's scoring 30 a game and throwing 4 touchdowns a game, but defense is still bad. He can't do this every week. Eventually, he's going to catch up to him, and it's catching up to him. Because you've experienced this with Drew Brees back in early 2010s when y'all were 7-9. You had to keep it. Even though Drew was able to consistently score points week after week, you saw the results. Your L's are going to start to come. And so if you have a bad defense and you have explosive offense, eventually it will catch up to you unless you maybe had an opportunistic defense. But Seattle's defense doesn't really create as many turnovers either. So I think Seattle right now is kind of trending down. They've lost to the Cardinals and the Rams, who are now above them in the division after leading the division the whole year. They still have to play Arizona this Thursday. So that's a huge game for them. And then the Rams, I believe they have to play the Rams again as well this year. So if Seattle does not win these divisional games, now we could be even discussing Seattle might not even make the playoffs because the next team after them has 5, below them has 5 wins. And I think it's the Bears. If the Bears came out and won tonight, they would have 6 wins, just like Seattle. And if Seattle loses Thursday, then, you know what I'm saying, even though we don't think the Bears are a serious team and you never know what other team could come in there, Seattle could be in danger of missing the playoffs. And that would be, I think, a surprise to a lot of people after seeing how they started off the season.
Yeah, and I think, I don't want to toot my own horn here, but I think I've been on the head of this whole thing for a while, is that, with the whole let Russ cook thing, MVP Russ, and I like Russell Wilson a lot, and I don't want to make it sound like I was not excited to see him do what he was doing, but at a certain point, you have to understand that this whole thing that he was doing was unreasonably efficient in a time where they had no choice but to make him do this because the team's defense was so bad. And, in the beginning of the year, you just thought they'd figure it out. But that's not the case. They haven't figured it out. Even in times when they've gotten pressure and gotten sacks, they still give up tons of yardage. This defense is horrendous. And with no running game to slow down, the offensive efficiency, that gets really tough. Not to mention that this is a time where they play against a tough defense like the Rams again. That's not a good sign. Jalen Ramsey was all over DK. DK didn't do really anything till the end of the game, and even then it didn't turn out to be of anything. The Rams just shut him down. And that's scary to think about because the Rams offense is kind of up or down at times depending on the matchup. And Seattle is such a plus matchup for them that it's just really tough.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's just something that Seattle's going to have to deal with, and see if they can figure it out. During the Pete Carroll era, it was Russell. They've been able to figure things out, but they may not be able to figure this out in time to maybe even stay in the playoffs. But speaking of the rest of the NFC West, I'm sure you watched the Arizona Cardinals in that Hail Mary. You've seen the play many times on your social media feeds of DeAndre Hopkins catching, mossing, dunking on those defenders in the Buffalo game, leading to the Cardinals' victory. And now they're sitting at the top of the NFC West at 6-3. Like I said, coming into a big game this Thursday against Seattle, that could put the nail in Seattle winning division potentially, but at the same time could help elevate the Cardinals even more, as now people are starting to wonder, well, they're winning games a lot of different ways. They're winning close games. Defense isn't the best, but they can make plays from time to time. So is it time to start looking at Arizona as the team that could come out of the NFC this year, especially with how wide open the NFC is, in your opinion?
Repeat that one more time.
Do you think the Cardinals are a team that could come out of the NFC this year? With knowing how open the NFC is and how they've won a lot of games in a lot of different ways. Yeah,
because Kyler Murray is as dynamic as they come, and their defense is okay, right? It's not horrible, but it's not Seattle, and that matters a lot. We're going to look back at this win that they got on the Hail Mary and think, wow, that win changed everything, because now, of course, I think they're not on top of it. Are they on top of the division now?
Yeah, they're first place.
Yeah, they're first place now. And that win, essentially, they beat Seattle for one. They have to play the Rams, I believe, twice still. They haven't played them yet. So that win right there really put a cementing mark on what this season has been. Kyler Murray's on an MVP level tear, and DeAndre Hopkins is in the running for Offensive Player of the Year, just like all these other guys. Like, so is Stephon Diggs, Alvin Kamara. They're all kind of in the same like production, unbelievable type of run. So when you have guys like, their offense is very diverse, and Kyler Murray is probably the quickest guy on his offense. Like, when he gets to scrambling, it's like there's no one that can touch him. Like, it's unreal how fast he scrambles out of the pocket. Like, we think Lamar is like just so good, and Lamar is good. Like, he has all the moves and stuff, but he's not. Kyler Murray is just, I am speed. Like, that's just what he is out of scrambling. It's like in an instant, he's just gained 5 yards. Like, what? He just ran 5 yards and it's like 0.2 seconds. That offense is scary. They got Kenyon Drake back, so if they get healthier and they get their, they get everybody back from injuries in a timely fashion, they could start peaking at a really good time. Unfortunately, this is what the Saints were looking to do. They had everybody healthy for the first time last week or on Sunday, and then this happened. So it was only right. It only makes sense. But the Cardinals are at a good place right now in the NFC, and let's quickly move to the NFC East. We don't like to talk about. I don't like to talk about them too much because the NFC East is not great. But the Giants get their second win in a row against two NFC East opponents. They beat Washington, and now they beat Philadelphia. Where are you seeing the Giants right now as potentially trying to take the East?
I think they have a chance to do it. I feel like they get better week after week. They've bought into Joe Judge. Daniel Jones is not making mistakes. And also, we have to admit, Daniel Jones can move. Like, he's not elusive, but straight line speed.
Bro, they're running read option with Daniel Jones. They're getting ready for the Justin Fields. It's the Justin Fields showcase right now. They're getting prepared for it. They're showing Justin, this is what we got for you, bud. Just wait. Start studying the playbook right now. Justin Fields is on the way. But no, for real, they got him running read option after that whole, long run, falling, not getting the touchdown thing. They just kind of embraced this Daniel Jones read option stuff, and it was kind of cool to see. Like, he looks confident running the ball, too. It's like, yeah, I can do this.
Yeah, and so I think they have a great chance to win a division. Now, the Eagles are helped out by the tie, because that doesn't count for a whole, I believe, percentage point. So they'll always, as long as even if the wins are the same, they'll always have one technically fewer loss. So they'll always be ahead by 0.5. Because the Giants, I believe, have moved within a game and a half, or I think a half a game of taking the lead in the division. And so this wins big. They seem to be getting better. And then the Eagles, we have to think about the Eagles. They have to play, I believe, the Steelers. No, they've already played the Steelers. They have to play the Packers, Arizona, in the next 2 out of the next 4 games. I believe they're playing Cleveland next week, which, I mean, the way Cleveland, if they run the ball, which they should be able to do against the Eagles, they'll have a chance. The Eagles don't have an easy schedule coming up, so they could easily lose the next 4 to me. And then all the Giants have to do is win 1 or 2, and now we're going into week 15, and Giants have a 1-game lead potentially, 1.5 game lead. Washington, we thought could do some things. It doesn't look like it, even though Alex Smith did look good in his debut back. Obviously, Castlin coming back from that injury starting. And then the Dallas Cowboys, I think a lot of people, Cowboy fans don't want to give up on it. But I think unless something changes, I don't think Dallas is going to get themselves really firmly back into the picture either. So it really might be the Giants division to lose after a while. Nobody, because that's the one team this entire year that no team really, even with the NFC being as bad, you thought they were going to win. You thought maybe Washington. Obviously the top 2 were Dallas and Philadelphia. But now the Giants, with a first-year head coach, second-year quarterback, shortened COVID offseason, getting better week to week with no Saquon Barkley could win the NFC East and make the playoffs. And I think that's crazy to think about.
Yeah, I'm looking at their next week schedule for the NFC East. Are we realistic? Like, realistically, all three NFC East teams that play this week in Week 11 could lose. The Eagles can definitely lose to the Browns. That is a losable game. The Bengals, Joe Burrow could go off and beat Washington. Even though Washington's defense is pretty good, he can go out there and beat Washington. The Vikings literally just have to hand the ball to Dalvin Cook. That's all they have to do to beat the Cowboys. When you look at it from that perspective, right, and we look at the NFC East standings altogether, the Giants are second in the NFC East. They already beat Philadelphia once. They beat Washington. And I think they still have one more game against the Cowboys to come.
Mm-hmm.
This is now let's look at their remaining schedule, right? They have one remaining tough game defensively because they have to play the Bengals, they have to play Seattle, they have to play the Cardinals, they have to play the Browns, they have to play the Ravens, which is their tough game, and they end the year off against the Cowboys. So this is very plus. This is very plus for them to try and do this. If you're a betting person, I would say put some money by the line for them to win the NFC East. But let's take another break and we'll come back and we'll move on to the AFC.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, Bryce, AFC talk now. We're moving on. GSMC football podcast here. And let's look at the battle of the rookies, man. AFC battle. We had not Joe Burrow. We had Justin Herbert versus Tua Tagovailoa. And advantage Tua this week as his defense really shut down Justin Herbert, and Tua looked really sharp, looked really good, very accurate with the football, didn't make any mistakes, didn't play too outside of himself. He looks about as all that was advertised. His spiral is amazing. And I told people to calm down, right? I said, people, let's relax. Tua will be fine after the Rams game. Mind you, I even had to tweet about this. The same Rams defense that people thought Tua was going to have a tough time in NFL or Tua is going to get reevaluated, they could potentially go draft somebody else, which essentially means they think that people were speculating that the Miami Dolphins are only playing Tua just to see what they have in them, just in case they want to go tank and grab another quarterback in the draft because they have Houston's pick. Let's keep in mind, I'm sorry, they wouldn't have to tank because they have Houston's pick. This is the same Rams defense that literally just put a whooping on Seattle. All right, Bryce, you have the floor now. I just wanted people to know this. The same one.
Yeah, I think Miami, they're a team that a lot of people coming into the year didn't know what they were going to be, even with all the new additions on the defensive side of the ball, because again, with the offseason being shortened, we don't know all the new players. Would they be able to learn the playbook, everything? Would they be able to get everything lined up and on track? And then, obviously people were wondering, when is Tua going to play? When is Tua going to play? and all of that. You know, Fitzpatrick, they started 1-3, then won 2 straight. Fitzpatrick was playing really good. Then they made that change to 2, and a lot of people were shocked by that. A lot of people were surprised. They were like, well, why would they make that move when Fitzpatrick was playing well? And you're kind of seeing it. You know, I think Brian Flores looks at his team and says, we have good special teams. We have one of the best kickers in Jason Sanders. Jakeem Grant can take a punt to the house at any time. You know, they block punts a few times this season. Defensively, they have one of the best corner tandems in Xavier Howard and Byron Jones. You know, they're able to get after the passer. You know, they have a lot of guys they brought over from New England. So, you know, they have that New England smarts on that defense. And then all Tua had to do when he came into the game was just manage. And that's the thing. I think this is what you would ideally want for a rookie quarterback. Because think about Joe Burrow. He's in a situation where he came into a position where he knew the team wasn't that good. That's why you see what happens against Pittsburgh, where he struggles. He's getting beat up. I think he's sacked the most in the league this year statistically. And so some people worry about the Bengals. Plus, the Bengals don't have the greatest organizational history when it comes to, you know, putting a team around certain players sometimes. And then, you know, Herbert, you know, they have talent in LA, but you see they can't win close games. It looks like Anthony Lynn might be out the door because he continues to lose. And so we'll have to see what happens with that. And he looks like he'll be a great quarterback in this league if he continues at this pace. But Tua was the guy who was drafted to the best overall team. And with them having everything in place, now they're like, Tua is accurate. He can read the field. He has good pocket presence. All we need him to do is manage the game, make the throws that are there, make plays that are there. And Tua has seemed to do that very well. And it gives him a chance to grow. It gives him a chance to learn. They can put more on his plate each week without saying, oh, snap, we're playing so-and-so. We need Tua to really just throw it 50 times and hope to God we win the game. Then think about it. The next 3 games, they play Denver this week. They play the Jets the week after that and the Bengals. The Dolphins could win the next 3 games and be 9-3. Tua would then be, I believe, 6-0 as a starter. Going into the Kansas City game, which that may be the first game we actually have to see Tua be like, all right, we're going to need you to go toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes and we're going to win this game. But he gets 6 games before that to really get accustomed to the game and really get his feet wet. And so it looks like Tua it has a bright future ahead. And I think now all that talk about the looking for a quarterback should be completely gone now. And I think, you know, you never know. This Miami team could be dangerous if they get to the playoffs. So it's something we definitely got to keep an eye on moving forward. But Tua has played as well as I think a lot of people would expect him to play with his skill set and will only get better from here.
Yeah, and I think, you know, you wouldn't have said at the start of the season that, say, if Herbert was just listed as a starter at the start, he definitely had the Chargers had the best roster out of all the rookies coming in. That was bar none, no questionable. Now, with injuries and such, trades made, clearly Miami's defense is playing at another level, and their offense works for them, right? You know, they run the ball. They have a balanced attack. They don't ask Tua to do just too much, but he can make big throws. He can make big plays. And honestly, that's kind of how it was in Alabama too. Although in later, like his last couple seasons, he was really slinging the football at Alabama, going toe to toe with some of the best in the conference. Tua can throw the ball, but they don't need him to do it, and that's a big thing. When you have to depend on your rookie to be the guy every single time, that's when you start to see you see more of the flaws of every quarterback when you have to depend on them 100% of the time, because you can't guarantee you'll get a stop or something like that, right? So I think Tua is in a really good position now. We saw the Patriots win against the Ravens, which is a pretty big win and was all said and done. So the Patriots are not necessarily out of the AFC East race, but, you know, it's Miami's division to lose at this point. I forgot the Bills were even there. That's the funniest thing. But the thing about the Bills are John Brown is hurt again. And we've seen time and time again when John Brown is out of the lineup, Josh Allen struggles. And against a good defense, that can bode trouble. And the Bills defense hasn't necessarily been the best in the secondary as of recent, as you can already attest to. So that is going to be an interesting game that's going to end up coming up fairly soon, right? So AFC East standings as follows. It's the Bills and the Dolphins. So the Bills are 7-3. Dolphins are 6-3. And the Dolphins play the Bills coming up at the end of the year. So Dolphins' next 3 games are the Broncos, the Jets, and the Bengals. Then they play the Chiefs. Then they have Patriots, Raiders, and Bills to finish out. They already played the Bills once, who the Bills only won by 3. And this is with Ryan Fitzpatrick at the helm. So just keep that in mind. I don't think necessarily the Bills have looked like they've been getting better. I think they've played kind of stagnant. I think that the Dolphins have progressively gotten better each game. And that's a good sign. They've lost to the Bills, they've lost to Seattle, and they lost to the Patriots, who 2 out of those teams are good. And the Patriots game was legitimately week 1.
Yeah, that's true. And so that week 17 matchup between Buffalo and Miami might be for the AFC East. And depending on where their records are, could be maybe for a 2nd, 3rd seed potentially. We never know, because it looks like as long as Pittsburgh keeps winning, they'll get the number 1. So we'll just have to see where they finish at that. But going back to what you were talking about New England, I just want some people to just understand something real quick. If you watched that game last night, it was a monsoon up there in New England. And if you actually look at the numbers and you look at I did the eye test before we start saying Lamar Jackson sucked it up again last night. He did not. He actually played one of his most efficient games in that weather last night. I don't think that game is on Lamar at all. I think there are other issues that Baltimore has, because Lamar did not play bad last night, and he did it in very bad weather. And the Patriots game plan, since they have no passing game, is to run the ball anyway, because they just ran it down Baltimore's throats and they struggled to stop them. And then, think about it. Imagine, it's the funniest thing is when Baltimore got that ball back for that last possession. That's when it rained the hardest. Literally, that's when the storm literally hit and you couldn't see nothing. That's when their final drive is. Of course, you're going to lose the game when you have that type of weather keeping you from being as effective offensively. You saw players slipping and sliding, drop passes, all types of things. So before we start trying to get on Lamar Jackson, yes, other games he needs to improve. Yes, we understand. But let's not look at the last game and try to dump onto him even more like he was the sole reason why they lost to New England. New England just had a good game plan. Belichick always does good against young quarterbacks. He's pretty much dominated Josh Allen throughout his entire career in terms of statistically. Josh Allen's never had a good game against the Patriots. So and Lamar actually played very efficient last night.
I mean, Lamar was okay. He had his best game passing all year and stuff like that. But the fact of the matter is this: their offense is stagnant and there's nothing really going on with it. They were unrealistically efficient last year, right? There were draw plays, runs up the gut. We're getting 8 yards a pop between Lamar, Mark Ingram, Gus Edwards, and all the like, right? Now it's not so much the case. They don't have any outside receiver threats that are progressing well. Des Bryant is no need to talk about him. And it's nothing bad. It's just that he hasn't done anything, right? And Hollywood Brown, although he has speed, it's not like he hasn't really developed anything more than just being somebody that can run deep and potentially get a home run ball. Mark Andrews is still their best receiving target. And this is his best game in 3 weeks that he got. And that's just the end of it, right? They couldn't get too much going. It was raining and stuff like that. But this game isn't going to crucify Lamar's, career, right? He's 6-3, right? That's it. They weren't going to get the number 1 seed no matter what at this point, because I don't see Pittsburgh losing a game and I don't see Kansas City losing a game this year for the remainder of the season. So at this point, they're just playing to stay in playoff contention. And they're doing all of this with basically they don't have Marcel Yanda. They didn't have him at the beginning of the year because he retired. They don't have Stanley, who they just paid, by the way, and he's out for the year. Their offensive line is banged up. They have no outside receiver threats whatsoever. And their running game is just not as efficient as it was last year. So they're going to get games like this where if they go down 10 plus, I've been saying it, if they go down by plus 10, I don't know if they win the game. Like, they don't have a lot of comeback ability within their offensive scheme, even though that defense is for real. Even that defense kind of gave up a couple points this week.
Yeah, so Baltimore definitely has some issues they need to address as a team. You know, because right now they're sitting out. I believe they're sitting in the 7th spot in the AFC. I believe so. They're literally on the borderline with the other two teams behind them. I believe it's Tennessee, and I forgot who the other team is. Also sitting at 6-3. So the AFC is in a log jam in their playoff race, and one loss could be the difference between you being in and out. And Baltimore right now is not playing their best football, so they're kind of getting close to maybe being out. And that would be extremely disappointing after all the additions they've made this offseason. The hype after last year, thinking LeBron was going to progress, and just all the expectations coming into the season to not even make it. I don't think anything major is going to happen from a coaching perspective, but there's going to be some reevaluations definitely within the team this next offseason if they end up not being able to pull through and make it to the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, playoffs are a one. Like, the AFC is really top heavy. So it's Kansas City. Then we have, of course, everybody else in the AFC North, essentially, because we forget Cleveland just won again. So Cleveland is 6-3, and the Raiders are 6-3 too. So like, there's just a lot of everything at the top is pretty heavy. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 6-3 teams. Then we have Kansas City, who is 8-1. We have the Bills, who are 7-3, and we have the Steelers, who are 9-0 still. Everybody else is pretty much, I guess, losers, for lack of a better term. Like the Texans, that Texans loss really hurt for a lot of different reasons, but because they don't have any picks in the draft, so them losing does them no favors. And the Jaguars, we don't know what they are at this point. They're just I guess they're a fun team to put gambling money against. They play hard. Like they aren't like horrible team losers. Like, they just lose. That's just kind of what they are, right? Let's take a break and we'll finish out the pod. Still talking about AFC.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
All right, we're still talking AFC here on the GSMC Football Podcast, where we're looking at the standings here and just where the breakup could technically be right now. So, Bryce, do you have what the playoffs would look like in the AFC if it started today?
I can pull it up real quick. I believe currently in the playoffs right now. Are we starting with AFC?
Yeah, AFC.
So, Pittsburgh is number 1, clearly undefeated. The Chiefs are number 2. The Bills are 3rd in the AFC. The Colts are 4th. The Raiders are the first wild card. The Dolphins are the second wild card. And then the Ravens are the third wild card. And then on the outside looking in, Tennessee is next up, and then Cleveland, and then New England. So if you look at that, a big log jam between 5 and 9. A very big log jam. And maybe if New England continues to win, they can throw themselves in there. But a big log jam right there. Titans Colts could obviously switch because they're still battling for the division title. Raiders have a big game this week coming up against Kansas City. And that's the only team that's beaten Kansas City this year. And, for the most part, it looks like we may not have a true AFC determination in terms of who all is going to make it till literally week 17, in my opinion.
That's pretty true. Like, if everybody just keeps staying at the top of the seeds, I think the biggest one is how the AFC South actually turns out, because as we know, the Titans are also 6-3. A lot of things can change there, but they're a weird team, man. Like, do you feel confident about the Titans at all watching them? Like, I do not, for sure. Honestly, the AFC South in general, there's no team in there I'm like sitting here like, ooh, I don't want to play a team. I don't want to play the Colts, or I don't want to play the Titans. They're not teams I'm afraid of. I'm also not afraid of the Raiders. Like, if I had to pick teams that I just don't want to play off rip, of course, Steelers, even though Steelers can be kind of weird sometimes as a team. But the Steelers, the Chiefs, you'd never want to see on the schedule. I would have to say the Dolphins are third on that list. Like, after what they've done, they've won 5 straight games. 5. Let me repeat that. They have a 5-game winning streak. The Chiefs have 4, and the Steelers have 9. So, out of the best winning streaks in the league, like, that's up there. And, of course, the Bills, after coming off a tough loss, the Bills are a team that, they're better offensively, I guess, this year. Of course, the numbers will say that, but it's not like they're sitting here game busters. Like, it's not weeks 1 through 4 anymore, right? Where they rattled off 4 straight wins. And if you look at their opponents in those 4 straight wins since then, things have just gotten tougher. Like, they played the Jets week 1. They played the Dolphins, and they barely beat the Dolphins. They were destroying the Rams at first, and the Rams almost came back and beat them, and there was a pass interference call that just didn't end up going in their favor. And then they beat the Raiders by 7 points. Everything else, though, they lost to the Titans, got destroyed by the Titans, rather. They lost to the Chiefs, and they played the Jets again, and they beat the Patriots by 3, which Cam fumbled the ball, and, all that jazz. And they beat a Seattle team that has no defense, and they lost to the Cardinals on a Hail Mary. They play in a lot of tight games, but there hasn't been a decisive win that I'm like, wow, that was impressive. Like, where's it at? Like, I haven't seen it yet.
You wouldn't look at the Seattle game like that. A lot of people looked at Seattle as that impressive win, the way they handled them the whole game.
In hindsight, no, because Seattle sucks. Like, that's just kind of what I've been trying to tell people. Seattle's not good. You can't be a good team and your defense is this bad. You want to know why? Because I watched it for 3 years for the New Orleans Saints during the 7 and 9 years. Drew Brees and Sean Payton were the only reason why we ever won 7 games a year for the back half of the 2010s. Look it up. It was atrocious. Horrific. I know you know it because you're our neighbor. You saw all the pain. You saw the bad defenses. We still have the worst defense of all time, statistically. And Seattle's climbing up the list. Don't you understand? Seattle stinks. Seattle's not good, man, on defense. They're so terrible defensively. It's just that Russell Wilson's so amazing that at this point, people are just like, hey, man, Russ can just win it all. No, I told you, Russ can't do it all when a defense is this bad because I've seen it before.
Yeah, that is true. That's true. I do remember those years, the good old years. Yeah, you're right. Not a lot of teams really scare you in the AFC. I think the one thing I will have to say about the Raiders, though, is that the Raiders have shown they can win in many different ways. They can win in a very just ugly run it game because Josh Jacobs, we know how good of a running back he is. And then also, if they need to throw it, they have the capability of throwing it with Derek Carr. He's played as efficient as he's played this year. I mean, we have to give them some points because they did beat Kansas City. Because remember, what is the one way you beat Kansas City? It seems like this year you have to outscore. Las Vegas was the only team that was able to do that this year. They were able to outscore the Kansas City Chiefs. And so, they're a team, while you may not want to sit here and say they're dangerous, they're a team that can beat the other teams because they can play different styles. And, as much as we don't want to admit it, they're not a great defensive team, but they're not Seattle bad. And they can make some plays. So as long as they can do that, if they're, have opportunities to take the ball away, they can do that. I feel like they would have an opportunity to make some noise in the playoffs. But overall, I would agree with you as well. I think Miami would be the most dangerous team in the AFC if we're talking about wild card picture, just because they have a defense, they have 2 shutdown corners, special teams, they have the ability to run the football a bit, and Tua is not going to make mistakes. And when you have that going for you, you're going to be in every game. We haven't seen Tua in you're down by 3 or it's a tie game, take us down the field and, win us the game. But we're going to eventually see that. And I think he'll be ready when that time comes. And, they just seem like they're the most complete team also out of all those teams. Because we're talking about Baltimore with their flaws. The Colts, Phillip Rivers is the biggest question mark. They'll only go as far as Phillip Rivers goes because they have the team has talent. If Phillip Rivers don't play, we're losing. Titans, they're confusingly just like, Derrick Henry really isn't having huge games. Tannehill isn't having huge games, and they're acting like defensively they can't stop anybody, but they can't get a pass rush. And, Oakland, we know they're susceptible on defense. And, you clearly see everybody else has these holes that's just like, whoa, this is definitely going to keep them back. Where Miami, can we really sit here and say that where it's just like, man, that's really going to hold them back unless you want to just say we just don't know where Tua is going to be when that time comes. That may be your most legitimate question. But outside of that, Pittsburgh, they're undefeated. People have had questions about Pitt because they don't know, are they really as good as their record says? People question that. They still have to play Baltimore. They play Buffalo. That's probably the 2 toughest games left. And I believe they play Cleveland again too. But I don't know if we're really expecting to be any more competitive than before. Kansas City, clearly to me, are the favorites just because we know what Kansas City is. They can outscore any team. Their defense is good. They're going to be the team you have to get through to me. And then, like you say, the Bills are just – they can play. It's like if they can just have a good game from Allen, Brown's healthy, and, Diggs leads the league in receptions and yards. A lot of people don't know that. They can do some stuff. You're just not sure about it because you don't have something convincing to go off of and say, yeah, this is it right here. So that's really my outlook in the entire AFC and the playoff picture right now.
Yeah, honestly, the AFC is just really, really tight. And let's look at the NFC real quick. What are the NFC standings looking like as far as playoff contention if the playoffs started today?
Well, if the playoffs started today, in the NFC, Green Bay is currently the number 1 seed in the NFC. The Saints are second. The Cardinals are third now that they're leading the division. The Eagles are fourth. Tampa is number 5, first wild card. The Rams are 6. And then Seattle is the other wild card spot. Teams looking in, Bears at 5-4. Lions with a win still technically have a chance at 4-5. 49ers, even though we think their season probably is not going to get better. Vikings, if they continue to win tonight on Monday Night Football. And, we have to throw the Falcons in there too if they go on a run. So outside of that, and then obviously we know the Giants and Washington and Cowboys have a chance necessarily because they could still win their division. But overall, NFC looks very wide open to me. You really don't have that one team you're just like, yeah, they'll beat everybody. We think Tampa, just because they have the most potential and they play as well as they can, we think they're the best. then maybe, the Saints, because of the veteran leadership, Sean Payton, knowing their history, you have to put them in there. Packers, it's just I'm unsure about the Packers because not a very physical team. If you run the ball against them, they've usually lost those games. Eagles, probably not. Rams could be a sneaky good team because they are, out of every team in the NFC West, the most complete team because they have a good offense and a good defense, where Seattle and Arizona have great offenses and below average to bad defenses. And then, Seattle, we know. So how's the NFC out of hearing that looking to you? What are you feeling?
I think the NFC has probably some of the most parity within the league. Actually, that's not true. The AFC probably has more parity, but I think it's NFC is all about matchups, really, and whoever can avoid the bad matchups as long as possible. Like, I don't believe the Saints want to play a team like the Rams because the Rams just know how to stop people. They know how to stop you from doing what you do, and it's just there's always like Achilles. That's an Achilles heel team for the Saints, like a team that can stop the run considerably and get up front, pressure through the middle of the offensive line. Saints kryptonite. I don't believe the Buccaneers want to see the Rams either for the same reasons. When you have guys who are older, this is thinking Drew would be back, right? Like, this is with Drew Brees in mind. But guys like Drew Brees, guys like Tom Brady, they don't like to deal with pressure up the middle because they can't just roll out and escape like they're Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, or Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson. That's the thing that gives those guys the edge, that you have to edge contain those sort of quarterbacks because they can always just bounce it out and extend the play. These older guys, these older quarterbacks cannot do such a thing. Even Aaron Rodgers, to a certain extent, can still bounce out and escape to the outside of the pocket and try and make something happen still at his age. So guys that can, or teams that can put up front pressure and get through the middle are really bad matchups. But on the flip side of that, of course, teams that have no sensibility of stopping people on defense, like the Seahawks, for example, or Green Bay gives up some points, man. Let's just call it how it is, right? Green Bay are not game stoppers. They gave 20 up to the Jaguars, of course. They gave up 28 to the Vikings. They give up some points. They lost to the Buccaneers badly. They lost to the Buccaneers. They gave 30 to the Saints. Like, teams that have good offenses typically can score on them, which is what I'm saying. So I'm not necessarily I wouldn't be surprised if they go up against Seattle, right? Seattle may still have something in the tank. It would be a shootout for sure, but I think Russell Wilson could outduel Aaron Rodgers in a situation like that, even though they played in the divisional round beforehand. So that might be a little bit of a revenge game potentially there. And of course, I think the Cardinals are the biggest wild card team to say, for lack of a better term, out there, because they can be extremely dynamic on both sides of the ball. They got playmakers everywhere, and they got good veterans. So that's for certain how I feel about it. But I think that's going to wrap it up for the GSMC Football Podcast for this week. Bryce, thanks for coming on again. We do this every week, and I think it just keeps getting better and better as the league continues to get more exciting. It makes our job much easier. So let's keep going. GSMC, we're about to finish out. And hopefully you all have a good week. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share the podcast. And don't forget to follow us on social media too. GSMC, we'll see y'all next week. Peace.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.